Okay, scholars. All right, World Civ, getting started here, and want to start with what is really the most amazing book we've got from the ancient world, which is your Bible, all right? The Old Testament, first of all, is we're a Christian college here, and so this actually makes us, I think, good at this. This is what Christian college is at its deepest roots, that we're the best at being able to deal with what is this very complex thing of a spiritual book, a supernatural book, a book that is unlike any other book in the world, and at the same time is history and politics and science and nature and poetry and literature and metaphor and everything else. It's Jesus' incarnation, you know, where the divine and the human, you know, come together. This is somewhat like, this is an incarnational sort of book. And so we're going to start with this class with it, and we come back to it a number of times in this book because, UCLA or, any place, you have to go to the Bible. The Bible's got is a treasure trove of documents. And we're going to talk today about this Abraham-Sarah family story. It is, you can make a very strong case that it's the most important story in all world history, in the sense that this document is used by the Jews, by the Muslims, and the Christians, two of the major civilizations in the world today, Islamic civilization and Western civilization, are sort of fundamentally rooted back into interpretations of what's written in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. Creation and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot going on in Genesis, but it really settles down into a really interesting historical document of massive historical importance, beginning about chapter 12 and then going on. And we're going to start around there, okay? So let's just start with that. It's just, this is really what makes history fun. And you haven't done a thing like this in high school. This is where college history really gets to be something exciting. So let's do it. All right. One of the most amazing things, we got a bunch of amazing things, of geographical amazement in history, is its civilization, as we talked about it on the first day. This political goal of creating the good society, largely rooted right here, most ancient times. There's also going to be in China. There's going to be some in South Asia. But here's where these political ideas, and how do we know about this? Because there's cities over in Mexico. There's cities in Africa. There's cities. It's not just cities. It's about writing, and how writing and scholarship they sort of snowball through history as traditions of political thought. Traditions of how can we make society better? How should we run things? How should we do things, And in the big issues, they get into issues such as, like, why are we here? And what's our relationship to God? And so religions and stuff like that. It's all rooted fundamentally in writing. And, we as Christians, Jews, Muslims, we're people of the book. We're people of scholarship. And one of the great things about a Christian college is that we promote Christian scholarship, because fundamentally Christianity is rooted deeply in people who read and write and work with the Bible. And that's that revelation that comes through the Bible to us. And so there's a bunch of other things, but Christian education, we'll be following that through the class, the development of different educational systems, as especially they relate to the scriptures that Muslims and stuff we all have, and going back to especially this Abraham-Sarah story. And the Abraham-Sarah story is the story of the Fertile Crescent. Where else do we know the names of people? This is not anthropology. This is not archaeology, where we have to invent best explanations, commonsensical, what's going on with these rocks. No, we actually have names, we have stories, we have real people, real things. And it's a travel story. You follow the crescent. It's obviously a crescent. Nobody's just like magically moving across this desert here. People are walking and moving on a crescent here. Famine sends people to Egypt. We'll talk about this later in the class, but Egypt is the great source of food for the Mediterranean. It's built on a weather system, a water system that goes deep into Africa. So Egypt always has food. This is why, Cleopatra is going to be important later on with the Roman Empire. So the thing is you have stories that in the Old Testament which fit our expectations. These are not like, Greek myths of, God's flying about, doing wild things. It really settles into a very realistic story of people moving around. And with this, we get an actual, now apparently this is oral history that comes down and eventually gets written long after, but in that oral history, a concern for places. And so this is where history becomes really, we are a discipline very interested in real people, individuals, making choices, especially traveling, going to places, and at places doing things that are very important for the development of world history, world events, world things, especially these ideas. So we get this picture in the Bible. For the next, this and Friday and on, we'll talk about this development of a sort of very interesting picture of the Fertile Crescent in the Bible. Now, let's quickly run through this. The key to this all is pretty much everybody points to the Fertile Crescent as the place where alphabets developed. And alphabets are sort of they're the great invention of the ancient world. 26 letters for the English language. 22 for Greek. I don't know, what's 20-something for Hebrew, is that just in a few little things, you can create whole books. Just the combination of a few letters. Pictographs are interesting. Hieroglyphics in Egypt, and we have pictographs other places that go deeper in time. Pictographs are not that good for being specific and stuff like that. This letter system, alphabet system, it's developed somewhere in the Middle East. You get newspapers coming out all the time talking about, discovering some new little bits and pieces, which is an indicator of the development of alphabets. So don't get overly committed to any one of them. But the basic idea is that the Fertile Crescent, where we get this biblical focus, Babylon especially, Tower of Babel, what's called the Plain of Shinar, here where the Tigris and the Euphrates River come close together. This Plain of Shinar is going to be huge in our course. That's where Baghdad is today, right up here on the Tigris. And so the thing is this Plain of Shinar is going to be at the forefront of history. Now, this is, a combination, the writing comes there. Now, with the writing, and I'm moving fast here, we would slow down if we were all in the same room, but the writing, we get eventually this Bible that comes out of it. And, there's a whole bunch of stories about how different alphabets come, the Hebrew and, various stuff. These things develop, but what we come down to is we want to talk about this here. I had you read about Abraham and Sarah, and then their children, their sexual affairs, their political, their property, with Abraham and Lot, separating the property. A lot of stuff which is just very commonsensical human stuff in there. And one of the things we just want to focus on here is this historical aspect of it, how we can use the Bible to sort of talk about the beginnings of history as it's dependent upon written documents, which is going to be this civilization tradition. First of all, is said that Abraham comes from Ur. Well, with the archaeologists, we dug up Ur. It is there. This is a ziggurat. This is one of the great, buildings of the city of Ur about the time Abraham would have lived. Abraham leaves the city and starts to travel. And this is this amazing thing in the book of Genesis, is that we can actually draw these arrows. See, this is not archaeology. This is not anthropology where we talk about folk movements or we know about specific people moving to specific places, doing specific things. This is always an indicator that who's writing it has historical concerns. And as I say, this is oral history that gets later written down. It's in a supernatural book, but we don't want to pretend that means, factoids are just full of but this is going to be, there's Jerusalem, which is eventually going to form. We get Hebron here, and we're going to talk about Hebron. I say Bethel, this is where the Jacob's ladder dream happens later on. So these are places that are actually hugely important. And in the Christian tradition, the Muslim tradition, and the Jewish tradition, very important that geography and history are tied together. God deals with real people in real places. And history, our field in this class, is interested in that same stuff. Real people in real places. Now, I asked you to do sort of a keep notes. This is an example. I gave you this, of how to do it. Here's you can draw little maps, here's Genesis 11. Here's some notes on the Tower of Babel stuff. Genesis 13, Abraham and Lot. One of the real fun things is that trees get involved, and trees become markers. And when the oral tradition was working, apparently a lot of these groves of trees were still there. And so they would actually use, at this tree, this is what happened, And so you have tree things, and those are always very fun. And then also when you get down in here, Abraham moves to Hebron. And then the story of Hagar and Ishmael. Hagar and Ishmael are a story in which the New Testament really develops this. Hagar is the Old Testament. Sarah is the New Testament. And this is where the book becomes really spiritual. This is where the things that were happening, God is giving little role play with Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, which is going to play out into all salvation history. One of the key aspects of the birth of Isaac is this, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about it will laugh with me. So this joy, this baby is born, and we love this baby. And Abraham and Sarah are a very loving couple. They're a very interesting couple. They laugh, they love. But, and like in the story of John 3:16, God sacrifices that baby. For God so loved the world he gave his only son. Well, that becomes the Abraham, Sarah, Isaac story becomes a type of role play of this love that, sort of a precursor story. And we'll see this. Typologies and stuff. We're not going to do a whole lot with it because that becomes really theological and sort of wild at some levels. But you have to deal with it as we read this Bible and look at it. So there's that Hagar story, and Hagar gets thrown out. But I wanted to get to Hebron, okay? And there's this absolutely boring stuff in the Bible. I started out reading those Table of Nations. That is so boring. And we historians love it because here's actually what is a political geography. They don't draw you a map, but they describe a map in writing. These people are here, those people are there, these people are here. And it's so boring in the Bible, but those boring passages are the passages that we cling to and go, oh my goodness, this is where we're getting lots of good information. And then we see other places in the story where markers of memory are written down, and there's a very boring passage which repeats itself over and over again where Abraham buys land for the purpose of burying Sarah, but he buys a family tomb. Now, okay, this is the site of that family tomb, we think, okay? Now, this has gone through, 4,000 years of history, but underneath it is a cave, which is a tomb. And this is the Muslims controlled this for several hundred years after they conquered the Israel in that area. And then today it's still Muslim controlled, I think, but at the same time it goes back to a Jewish site, and it's also then a Christian site too, in which we have the tomb. And a tomb is what? We'll see this as we go into later, like with Eusebius and such. There'll be a lot of talk about tombs. And they'll place the tomb. Here's a tomb. And what is a tomb? But it's a memory device. It's a device that shows a culture is interested in memory, is interested in remembering facts, information, who especially people are, especially people who did important things. And so we have a marker, Hebron, this tomb, which is a marker for not just, Abraham with this, because that's one of the fascinating things about this story we get. And we're going to see this in Herodotus, we're going to see this in the Greeks, is the ancient world understands very much, because it's built around family, it understands very much the role of women in history. So you get lots of women doing lots of things in ancient history. Modern history does, represses a lot of women's stuff, but the ancients don't. The ancients don't do it at all. And let me show you just one of these fun lines. That's Table of Nations. That's boring. This is we just good old Bible stuff here. Yeah, this is a great passage here, Genesis 21, where Sarah is being what we would think of a little feisty and pushing Hagar away. And in this situation, God tells Abraham, whatever Sarah tells you to do, do it. And this is that really interesting interaction between God and humanity that goes throughout history on into today and in your own lives. But at the same time, it's an indicator here for us how that we see that women are so much involved in this. And in let me go back to this here, is that we get in the tomb. Tomb is built for Sarah. Abraham goes in. Also then Rebecca and Leah are in it, who are daughters-in-law. And then Rachel is not in it because she dies in a different place. But you have this whole family, men and women, buried there, and they become then this sort of founding family of what is a type. What you'd have to say is the most interesting and most fascinating, most important, most influential historical biography, a family biography of where we know the place, we know the names, we know the situations, we know a bunch of the things that went on with them. And we have a tomb. And beyond that, we don't know a whole lot, but it's fascinating that we've got something that reaches back to this time, maybe 2,000 years BC, okay? Now, I want to move in this last little section of the Bible real quick, which is I gave you to the story of Joseph. Joseph continues the story. Joseph goes down to Egypt and becomes a bureaucrat. And we're very interested in these bureaucrats, these people who work for government. Especially here, the pharaoh, a monarch, and we're going to talk about this with Herodotus too. This ancient Egyptian monarchy becomes fascinating for all of history, but especially for the ancient world. Where did the strongest monarchy happen? Well, it was down there in Egypt, and it lasted long, and it was powerful. But Egypt became famous for slavery. Herodotus talks about it, and it's this. Where do the pyramids come from? You have to have slave labor for this. And so the Egyptian monarchy becomes famous for its slavery, its oppression. And it becomes a model of bad government that oppresses its people. Now, Genesis, and we'll end with this, offers us a window into when that and how that oppressive government gets started. And sadly, it is Joseph. Joseph comes, interprets a dream of Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh says, Joseph then actually sort of creates his own job description, saying Pharaoh should hire a wise person to organize things, make everything work out for this. And Pharaoh says, yes, let's hire you. And so then you get a passage here in where are we? 40. Yeah, 40. Oh, that's in Exodus. The slavery and oppression story is so big. But here, this passage here, and we'll end this because slavery and freedom are such an important story, this dynamism between good government and bad government. The big question is going to, how do you promote freedom? How do you not have slavery? And so you have saved our lives. May we find favor in your eyes, and we will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as a law. You know, Joseph reduced the people to servanthood. They gave up their land. So with that, we'll set up some things that we'll be talking about more through the class. This is an exciting class. It's a fun class. It is so much better than anything you've ever done, I think, in high school or something like that. Because we really want to get into this slavery and freedom issue, good government issues, and we want to get into it historically, where we don't just talk about it in broad generalizations. We actually talk about people who made decisions in the ancient world and moved about and where specific things happened that transformed the world so that we live today. So we'll have fun in this class. Come back on Friday.